You thought this was just you. You thought it was just your weakness, your lack of discipline, your secret sin. But what if I told you, this battle didn't start with you? What if the thing you keep blaming yourself for was actually designed, planned, timed, engineered? Because there's a reason it hits you when you're alone. There's a reason it comes back stronger after you pray. And there's a reason you feel disconnected from God right after it happens. That's not random, that's strategy. And before this video ends, I'm going to show you the one verse that completely breaks this cycle. But first, you need to understand something most Christians never realize. You are not just fighting a habit. You are in a war. The moment you keep hiding. Let's be honest. There's a moment. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That moment when your mind starts drifting, when the images begin to form, when something inside you whispers, just this once. And even before you act, you already feel guilty. Why? Because deep down, you know something is off. But here's the terrifying part. That moment is not neutral. It's not just your brain. It's not just hormones. It's not just temptation. That moment is an entry point. And what enters through that moment is what keeps you trapped. But here's what no one tells you. The enemy doesn't just want you to sin. He wants something much deeper. And if you don't catch this, you'll keep losing the same battle again and again. The real goal is not lust. You think the goal is lust. It's not. Lust is just the doorway. The real goal, disconnection. Every single time you fall, what happens next? You feel distant from God. You avoid prayer. You feel unworthy. You tell yourself, I'll come back later when I'm better. That's it. That's the trap. Because the enemy knows something most people ignore. A disconnected believer is a powerless believer, so he doesn't need to destroy you overnight. He just needs to keep you in a cycle. Fall, shame, distance, repeat. And the worst part? You start thinking this is who you are. But what if this entire cycle was never your identity, but a setup designed to keep you from discovering your real identity? Why it hits hardest after you try to change. Have you noticed this? The moment you decide, I'm going to change. I'm going to get closer to God. I'm done with this. Suddenly, the urges get stronger, the thoughts get louder, the temptation becomes more intense than ever before. Why? Because you just became a threat. You see, as long as you're stuck in the cycle, you're predictable. But the moment you try to break free, you become dangerous. And that's when the attack intensifies. But here's what most people misunderstand. This is not a sign you're failing. This is proof. You're getting closer to breaking out. And that's exactly why the pressure increases. The ancient understanding you were never taught in the ancient world. Desire wasn't always seen as you. It was often described as something external, something that comes, something that whispers, something that tries to take residence, almost like a stranger at the door. But today, we've been taught it's just you. It's your nature. You can't change. That lie alone keeps millions trapped. Because if you believe it's you, you'll never fight it correctly. But if you realize this is something trying to influence you, attach to you, control you, then everything changes. And this is where the breakthrough begins. The whisper that doesn't sound like a voice. Let me ask you something. When temptation comes, does it sound loud? No, it's subtle, almost like your own thought. Just look, just once. No one will know. That's how it gets in, because if it sounded like an attack, you would resist, but it disguises itself as you. And that's what makes it dangerous, because now you're not fighting an external enemy. You're arguing with your own mind, and most people lose right there. But what if I told you There's a way to recognize that voice instantly and shut it down before it grows. We'll get to that. But first, you need to understand why the shame feels so heavy. The weight of shame is not accidental after it happens. You feel it, that heaviness, that sinking feeling, that voice saying, "You messed up again. You're not worthy. God is disappointed." But here's the truth most people never realize. That shame is not from God, because conviction leads you toward God. Shame pushes you away from Him, and the moment you pull away, you lose the very power you needed to overcome. That's the setup, not just the fall, but what happens after the fall. And if you don't break that part, you'll stay stuck forever. The cycle that keeps repeating. Let's map it out. You try to stay clean, temptation hits, you resist for a while, then you give in. Immediately, shame, distance, silence. Then after some time, you try again, and the cycle repeats. But here's the question: why does it feel almost programmed? Because it is, not by you, but by something that benefits from you staying stuck. And the longer you stay in it, the harder it feels to escape. But here's what changes everything: understanding the moment where the cycle can be broken, and it's not where you think. The moment that decides everything. Most people think the battle is lost when they act. It's not. The battle is lost much earlier. It's lost in a single moment, when you entertain the thought instead of rejecting it. That tiny window is where everything shifts. Because once you entertain it, it grows, it strengthens, it pulls you in. But if you shut it down early, it loses power. And this is where the verse we're going to reveal later becomes your weapon. Because it doesn't just tell you what to do, it shows you how to stop it at the root. Why willpower keeps failing you. You've tried willpower, you've tried discipline, you've made promises, and yet it keeps coming back. Why? Because willpower fights at the surface. But this battle is happening deeper. You can't win a spiritual battle with human strength alone. That's why you feel exhausted. That's why you feel stuck. That's why nothing seems to work long term, because you've been fighting with the wrong weapon. But there is another way. And once you see it, everything shifts. The shift from fighting to walking. Here's where things start to change. The solution is not just resisting, it's replacing. It's not just saying no. It's walking in something stronger. Because emptiness always gets filled. And if you don't fill it with the right thing, the old pattern comes back, stronger, faster, more aggressive. So the question becomes, what are you walking in? And this leads us directly to the verse. But before I show it to you, you need to understand why this verse is so powerful. The verse. Most people read but never apply. You've probably heard it before. You may have even read it, but you missed what it actually means, because on the surface, it sounds simple, but underneath, it contains a strategy, a mechanism, a system that completely changes how you fight this battle. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Why this verse is different. Most verses tell you what not to do. This one tells you what to do. And not just that, it tells you how to live in a way where the desire itself loses power, not suppressed, not buried, but weakened at the root. This is not behavior control, this is transformation, and that's why this verse is dangerous to the very thing trying to keep you trapped. The build-up to the breakthrough. Everything we've talked about leads to this. The setup, the cycle, the voice, the shame, the failure of willpower. All of it points to one truth. You've been fighting wrong, but now you're about to see the correct way. And when you do, you'll realize something shocking. You were never meant to fight this alone. The verse that ends the cycle. Here it is. The verse that changes everything. Walk by the Spirit, and you will not fulfill the desires of the flesh. Let that sink in. It doesn't say, try harder. It doesn't say, resist more. It says, walk, Because the focus is not on the battle, it's on the direction. And when you walk in the Spirit, something happens automatically. The desires begin to lose their grip, not instantly, but consistently. And this is where your freedom begins. What walking actually means: walk by the Spirit. That word walk is not passive. It's continuous, daily, moment by moment. This is not a one-time decision. It's a direction. Because here's what most people get wrong. They try to fight lust in moments of temptation, instead of building a life where temptation has less power. Walking means what you watch, what you listen to, what you think about when you're alone. Because whatever you walk in daily, you will fall into eventually. So the real question is, what direction are you walking when no one is watching? The invisible door you keep leaving open. You say you want freedom, but there's a door you keep leaving open, and you already know what it is. It's that content, that account, that late-night scrolling, that one trigger you refuse to cut off. And every time you leave that door open, you're not being attacked, you're being accessed. Because temptation needs an entry point. And if you don't close the door, you'll keep blaming yourself for something you're still feeding. But what happens when you finally shut it? Everything changes. The 3-day spiritual reset. Day 1. This is where it gets practical. Day 1 is about separation. You remove access. Delete what needs to be deleted. Unfollow what needs to be unfollowed. Create distance from your triggers, because you cannot heal in the same environment that keeps breaking you. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort, that's withdrawal, not weakness. And if you can survive day 1, you've already done something most people never do. Why day 1 feels like war? Day 1 is the hardest, because everything inside you will scream, go back. Your mind will justify, your body will crave, your emotions will push. But understand this. This is not just desire. This is resistance, because something is losing its grip on you, and it doesn't want to let go, so it fights. Hard. But if you endure this moment, you weaken it more than you realize. Day 2. Replacement, not resistance. Day 2 is where most people fail, because they try to just hold on. But empty space is dangerous. So instead of just resisting, you replace. You fill your mind with truth, with scripture, with purpose. Because whatever fills your focus feeds your direction. And if you don't replace the habit will replace you. The power of speaking the verse. This is critical, not just reading, speaking out loud. Walk by the Spirit. When temptation comes, you say it again and again and again, because your voice interrupts the pattern. It breaks the loop. It shifts your focus. And something happens when truth is spoken. It creates distance between you and the thought trying to control you. Day 3, identity shift. Day 3 is where transformation begins, not behavior, identity. You stop saying, I'm struggling with lust, and you start declaring, I'm walking in the Spirit, because identity drives behavior, not the other way around. And if you don't change how you see yourself, you'll always return to what feels familiar. The lie that keeps you stuck. Here's the lie. This is just who I am. No, this is what you've been trained into, and anything learned can be unlearned, but only if you stop agreeing with it, because agreement is what gives it power. The 10-second rule that changes everything. When temptation hits, you have a window, about 10 seconds, before it grows, before it pulls you in, before it becomes overwhelming. And in those 10 seconds, you decide everything. Speak the verse, shift your focus, move your body, break the pattern, because if you win the first 10 seconds, you win the moment. Why most people lose at night is dangerous, because you're tired, alone, unfocused, and your guard is down. That's when it strikes hardest. So you don't wait until night to prepare. You prepare during the day, because battles are not won in the moment. They're won in preparation. The trigger, you haven't noticed it's not always visual. Sometimes it's emotional. Stress, loneliness, boredom, frustration. Those emotions become gateways, and lust becomes the escape. So if you don't deal with the emotion, you'll keep returning to the behavior. What happens when you fall again? And yes, you might fall again, but this time you don't stay down. You don't run from God. You run to Him immediately. No delay, no shame cycle, because the faster you return, the weaker the pattern becomes. Breaking the shame loop. Shame says, hide. Truth says, come back. And the moment you choose truth, you break the loop, because the enemy loses power when you stop hiding. Why consistency beats intensity. You don't need one perfect day. You need consistent direction, because small wins build strength, and strength breaks cycles. The moment you start changing, there will be a moment where the urge comes. But something is different. You see it earlier. You stop it faster. You recover quicker. That's change, not perfection, progress. Why the attack comes back stronger right before breakthrough. Pressure increases because something is about to break, and resistance always rises before release. You are not alone in this. You've felt isolated, ashamed, like no one understands. But this battle is more common than you think, and that's why it's so dangerous, because no one talks about it. The secret of those who overcome, they don't rely on willpower. They build systems, they control inputs, they walk daily, not perfectly, but consistently. The power of environment. Your environment shapes your behavior, so change it, because staying in the same setup will produce the same outcome. What you focus on grows. Focus on temptation, it grows. Focus on purpose, it weakens, because attention is fuel. The role of purpose. When your life has direction, distractions lose power, because you're no longer just avoiding something. You're moving towards something. The final test. There will be a moment when it comes back unexpectedly, stronger, sudden, intense, and in that moment, everything you've learned will be tested. What you do in that moment, you don't panic, you don't entertain it, you move, you speak, you shift immediately, because hesitation is where people lose. The breaking point. Then one day, something changes. The urge comes, and it passes, without control, without struggle, without collapse. That's the breaking point. What freedom actually feels like. It's not the absence of temptation, it's the absence of control. Because now, you're not being pulled, you're choosing. The new normal. You think clearer, you feel stronger, you connect deeper, because the weight is gone. What you've actually defeated, not just a habit, a system, a cycle, a setup. The truth you need to remember, this was never just about lust, it was about control, and now you've taken it back. The verse that changed everything. Walk by the Spirit. Not try, not fight, walk, because that's the key, and always was. This is your moment now, you know. The setup, the strategy, the solution. The question is, what will you do next? Because this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not later, now. And if you start walking today, everything begins to change.